एम्बेसडर शशांक, एम्बेसडर राजीव सीकरी जी और मेरे से पहले वक्ता श्री श्याम परांदे जी और मित्रों, श्याम जी ने मेरा परिचय कराया। श्याम जी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और उन्होंने मान लिया कि मैं विदेश मंत्रालय की स्थायी समिति अर्थात स्टैंडिंग कमेटी ऑन एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स का सदस्य हूँ, तो इसलिए मैं विदेशी मामलों का एक विशेषज्ञ हूँ। ये आप भारतीय संसद को कुछ ज्यादा ही गंभीरता से ले रहे हैं। हम सब जानते हैं कि भारत की वर्तमान परिस्थिति में रक्षा सुरक्षा का मामला कितना गंभीर है। एक तरफ हमें पाकिस्तान से खतरा है और दूसरी तरफ हमको चीन से बड़ा भयंकर खतरा है। तो ऐसे मामलों में इस परिस्थिति के अंदर तो रक्षा मंत्रालय की जो स्टैंडिंग कमेटी स्थायी समिति होनी चाहिए, उसको बड़ा गंभीरता से काम करना चाहिए। और हमारी सरकार ने रक्षा मंत्रालय का महत्व देखते हुए उस स्थायी समिति को जो अध्यक्ष दिया है, उसको देश की कितनी चिंता होती है, वो कितना बड़ा राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के मामलों में विशेषज्ञ है, ऐसा व्यक्ति राज बब्बर उस समिति का अध्यक्ष है। तो स्थायी समिति के अध्यक्ष अगर इतने ज्ञानवान होंगे अपने विषय के, तो मैं तो केवल एक सदस्य मात्र हूं, तो इसलिए मेरे से अधिक अपेक्षा ना रखें। मित्रों, सांसद होना कोई विक्रमादित्य का सिंहासन नहीं है कि आप बने और विशेषज्ञ हो गए। ये मेरा जो पहले वाला पेशा था, उसमें तो ये लाभ था कि पत्रकार जो होता है वो हर मामले का विशेषज्ञ हो जाता है। मेरा दुर्भाग्य ये रहा कि मैं दोनों बार ऐसे पेशे में रहा जहां बिना कुछ जाने हुए आप विशेषज्ञ का दर्जा पा सकते हैं और लोग स्वीकार भी कर लेते हैं। हम एक विशेष परिस्थिति के माध्यम से गुजर रहे हैं। देश में सरकार है, पर प्रधानमंत्री भी हैं, पर प्रधानमंत्री के पास सत्ता नहीं है। उनके पास पद है, पर सत्ता की चाबी कहीं और है। जैसे पहले रहता था ना एक राक्षस, उसकी जान 7 समुंदर पार एक तोते के अंदर, तोता पिंजरे में। तो उसी तरह से आज प्रधानमंत्री तो हैं, नीली सी पगड़ी लगाए हुए डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह, पर चाबी उनकी श्रीमती सोनिया गांधी के पास। तो स्वाभाविक रूप से बाकी सब मामलों में गड़बड़ है, इसलिए विदेश मंत्रालय में भी गड़बड़ है। एक विदेश मंत्री थे श्री एस.एम. कृष्णा, वो संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ यूएनओ के अधिवेशन में गए। 122 करोड़ लोगों के प्रतिनिधि, 120 करोड़ भाषण दे रहे हैं। और जब 10 मिनट हो गए, चौथा पेज पलटा, तब किसी ने आके कहा, ये तो आपसे पहले जो पूर्व वक्ता था, ये आप उसके देश का भाषण पढ़ रहे हैं। ये हुआ। तो कितनी गंभीरता के साथ हम लोग इस विषय को लेते हैं। एक तरफ राज बब्बर उसके अध्यक्ष, और दूसरी तरफ ऐसा विदेश मंत्री जो अपने देश के भाषण में और किसी और देश के भाषण के अंगोला का था, कहाँ का था मालूम नहीं, और वो बोलता जा रहा है और उसको पता भी नहीं लगता वो तो कोई आप जैसा प्रबुद्ध श्रोता था, उसने आके बताया महोदय ये तो भाषण आपके देश का ही नहीं है। तो फिर सलमान खुर्शीद को लाया गया, विद्वान, ऑक्सफोर्ड के पढ़े हुए, पता नहीं कहाँ कहाँ पढ़े हो। तो उनके विदेश मंत्री के बनने के बाद चीन ने एक हमला, दूसरा हमला, 30 किलोमीटर अंदर आके अपने झंडे वंडे लगा दिए। तो सलमान खुर्शीद को भेजा गया, आप जाके जाओ चीनियों को आंख दिखाओ, बात करो। तो उनका एक ही वक्तव्य आया वहां से, शंघाई शहर इतना सुंदर है, इस देश का वातावरण इतना अच्छा है कि मेरा दिल करता मैं यहीं बस जाऊं। हमने कहा अगर बस जाओ तो देश का कितना कल्याण हो जाए। पर उन्होंने उस इच्छा को किया। मित्रों, ये सरकार कैसे चल रही है, क्योंकि विदेश नीति उसी सरकार का हिस्सा है। एक बार सोनिया जी ने कहा ये रात है, सोनिया जी ने कहा ये रात है। तो डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह पास में बैठे थे, उन्होंने कहा हाँ मैडम ये रात है। तो कपिल सिब्बल और चिदम्बरम और बाकी मंत्री बैठे थे, तो उन्होंने डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह की तरफ देख के कहा हाँ सर ये रात है, पर मित्रों ये आज सवेरे की बात है। मित्रों ये आज सवेरे की बात है। तो विदेश नीति तो इस सरकार का हिस्सा है, और जिस तरह से ये सरकार काम कर रही है, in fact I would like to compliment Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation and Antar Rashtriya Sahayog Parishad for having organized this program, because this was the need of the hour. And I was discussing with you just now the domestic position, the way situation is prevailing, because foreign policy and our domestic circumstances, they are two sides of the same coin. And we have a very, very enlightened panel, two gentlemen who have spent their entire lives in foreign affairs. Of course, they will be able to deal with the subject in a far more specialized manner than I will be. But still, I will try to understand along with you the main issues involved in it. Well, the foreign policy obviously reflects our strengths, our weaknesses, aspirations and interests. This is the sum total of the foreign policies, and these in turn are controlled by our history, natural resources, geographical locations, and that in turn decides our neighborhood. And another the settled fact of India is that our foreign policy and its foundations were laid by Pandit Nehru. And by and large, that is the model with little alteration here and there we have been following. Now, India has borders with 6 countries, and 7, Sri Lanka is just 30-40 kilometers away. With Bangladesh, we have probably the longest border of 4,000 odd kilometers, followed by China, 3,380 kilometers. Then Burma is 1,463, Nepal 1,690, and then Bhutan is 605, and China is, Pakistan is 2,912 kilometers. That means we have a total border with our neighbors 14,103 kilometers. In addition, we have a coastline of 7,000 kilometers. So, gentlemen and ladies, it's a huge border. And in our scheme of things, the first aim of the foreign policy has to have good relations with our neighbors, and number 2, to protect our borders. Now, I mentioned to you earlier which are the main factors which govern the foreign policy of any country. And I also said that Pandit Nehru was the principal character who defined our foreign policy. Now, in addition to the factors I mentioned, Pandit Nehru had a very romantic idea about the world. And it's very important to understand if we are going to understand and the foreign policy we have pursued so far and the options available to us in future. And Pandit Nehru in turn was influenced a great deal by a political scientist, a Labour Party leader, who of course was disowned by the Labour Party later on, Harold Laski. And Harold Laski had many distinguished students. And one of them who had a lot of impact on India was Krishna Menon. And second was Dr. K.N. Narayan, who later on became the President of India. And he was inducted into Indian Foreign Service at the instance of Harold Laski by Pandit Nehru. And the influence of Harold Laski on Nehru was so much that Galbraith, he said, I quote him, the center of Nehru's thinking was Laski. And in fact, one minister is on record having said, and I quote him, in every meeting of the Indian cabinet, there is a chair reserved for the host of Professor Harold Laski. So, and Nehru was so influenced that in 1954, he established a chair for Harold Laski in the Institute of Political Science in Ahmedabad. Now, those of us who want to understand why Nehru behaved the way that he behaved, they must spend some time in going through the life of Harold Laski. The time is limited, so I won't go into that aspect, but that had a very important bearing on shaping Nehru's vision of the world and our foreign policy so far. Now, we got freedom on 15th of August 1947, and along with that, we lost 1/3 of the country in the shape of Pakistan. And that not only changed our geography, but also neighborhood. If there was no Pakistan, our next door neighbor would have been Afghanistan. And here we had another neighbor who has been a constant pain even in our neck so far. And that obviously has impacted our economic policies, defense policies, and foreign policy since 1947. Pakistan was born on 14th of August 1947. 22nd October 1947, it sent its troops in Mufti and attacked Kashmir. And Kashmir was under the rule of the Maharaja Hari Singh, who was a great patriot. And I won't go into that long history, but I cannot restrain myself from mentioning the heroic defense which made it possible for later on to reclaim Kashmir for India was the great sacrifice put on by Brigadier Rajendra Singh Jamwal. He was ordered by the Maharaja to fight to the last bullet and last man, and Brigadier Rajendra Singh had just ramshackle army. Most of the army of the Maharaja consisted of Muslim troops. They defected to the enemy to the last man. It was only with the help of very few Dogra troops that Brigadier Rajendra Singh gave a heroic fight. He literally fought to the last man and last bullet. And if, gentlemen and ladies, you ever go to Uri, you will find a small memorial which stands there marking the heroic sacrifice which Brigadier Rajendra Singh made. And the first Mahavir Chakra of the Indian Army was not given to an officer of the Indian Army. It went to Brigadier Rajendra Singh, who was the CNC Commander-in-Chief of the state forces of Jammu and Kashmir. Well, this may not be very relevant to the foreign policy, but let us also know, if Kashmir belongs to India, it is because of people like Brigadier Rajendra Singh. For 3 days, he held the enemy at bay, and Indian government, the Maharaja got time to sign the instrument of accession, and India got the time to rush its forces, and the only airport which had, that could not fall into the enemy's hands. Now, Pakistan is an ugly reality of this subcontinent. And we have been trying to deal with Pakistan for the last 64, 65 years. And with what success, I leave it for the audience to judge. Frequently, there are talks about Punjabiyat, composite culture. खाना पीना एक है. हम लाहौर में गए, हमसे किसी ने पैसे नहीं लिए. Damn it, if the ties were so strong, then there would not have been a demand for the creation of a separate Pakistan. क्या जरूरत थी? Because these were not ties which were strong enough, or they were meaningless, and therefore there was a demand for the creation of Pakistan. And for that, we will have to go back into the history a little. Because without understanding history, you cannot understand present, and without understanding present, you cannot plan for future. See, there was a bloodbath in 1946 when Jinnah gave a call for direct action. 16th August 1946, there was a bloodbath in the streets of Calcutta. Thousands and thousands of Hindus were butchered. Then there was a retaliation by Hindus also later on. And that set the trend for the rest of the country. And as a result, we had a bloody partition. Now, the roots of this partition, ladies and gentlemen, they go to 712 AD, when Muhammad bin Qasim attacked Sindh. And that left only two options. The victor left only two options in front of the vanquished: convert or be sold. And that trend followed for the next 1100 years. अगले 1100 साल तक यही चलता रहा, with Hindus trying to defend their faith, their women, their property, their places of worship, and invading Muslims, trying to give them one of the two options: convert or die. Now, by the time when Aurangzeb died in 1707, by that time the Mughal Empire started disintegrating. And by the time the British came, you had Sikhs controlling Punjab, you had Marathas controlling central and western India, you had Rajputs and Jats controlling many other parts of the country. And Delhi was taken by the British not from Muslims but from Marathas. The Mughal emperor at that time in 1803 was a pensioner of the Marathas, and the final battle took place which is Noida now. It was called entire area was called Patparganj. And those of you who go to golf course in Noida, on one side you will find a small memorial which speaks about the bravery of Marathas. This was erected by the British. And if you happen to go to that golf course, you will see that memorial put up in Delhi stone. And that was in 1803. And General Lake walked into Delhi, and since then, the Mughal emperor, he became a pensioner of the British government. Now I take you straight to 1857, when the first uprising took place. By that time, the Muslims and Hindus, they have reached a certain amount of understanding. And because this is very important to understand this aspect. And they rose as one man against the British Empire. But the British were clever. They were able to put down the uprising. And then they decided, they studied, because they were studious people. They studied. They couldn't have built such a huge empire without being very serious about the whole thing. And they figured out that there were certain fault lines in the Indian society. If they worked on that, they will be able to establish their empire for good. So, what were the fault lines? Hindu versus Sikhs, great problem between the two. Hindu versus Muslim, great problem between the two. North versus South, great problem between the two. Aryan versus Dravidians, great problem between the two. Caste Hindus versus so-called untouchables, great problem between the two. Now, and the princes versus subjects, great problem between the two. They worked on all these 6 fault lines. And easiest to work was the Hindu-Muslim, because they had 1,000 years of bloody history behind them. And they found a very ready-made material in a man called Sir Syed Ahmed, who was the employee of the East India Company. Sir Syed Ahmed's name is very, very important to understand what happened in the subcontinent. There is a speech by him, March 16, 1888, which Sir Syed delivered. It's a huge speech, but I will quote only 2 paragraphs in front of you, which he made at Meerut and which is on record. The speech was made at Meerut, March 16, 1888, and it is the longest speech, but I am just quoting 2 paras. Is it possible that under these circumstances, these 2 nations, the Mohammedans and Hindus, could sit on the same throne and remain equal in power? Please mark the words. Most certainly not. It is necessary that one of them should conquer the other. To hope that both could remain equal is to desire the impossible and inconceivable. At the same time, you must remember that although the number of Mohammedans is less than that of the Hindus, and although they contain far fewer people who have received a higher English education, yet they must not be considered insignificant or weak. Probably they would by themselves be enough to maintain their own position. But suppose they were not, then our Muslim brothers, the Pathans, would come out as a swarm from their mountain valleys and make rivers of blood to flow from their frontiers on the north to the extreme end of Bengal. This thing, who after the departure of the English would be conquerors, would rest on God's will. And last sentence, please mark it. But until one nation has conquered the other and made it obedient, peace cannot reign in the land. Sir Syed Ahmed Bukhari, he is not a social dropout, please, gentlemen and ladies. He is not a social dropout. He is the founder of Aligarh Muslim University. And he was supported by the British. He was respected by the Muslims. At his call, the Muslim community contributed a lot. And he is respected, honored by the present establishment sitting in Delhi. Aligarh Muslim University is responsible for the creation of Pakistan. You must have heard of countries creating universities. But here was a university which created a new country. And Sir Aga Khan, when he went to address a convocation in 1954 to Aligarh Muslim University, he told the students and the teachers there, you should be proud of yourself. I am quoting him, Sir Aga Khan. You should be proud of yourself because you alone have created a new country, the world called Pakistan. And now the so-called secular regime sitting in Delhi has decided to open with the help and funds of the state central government, 6 more Aligarh Muslim universities in the entire country. These are the facts. And when we understand how to deal with Pakistan, we have to understand the mindset which Pakistan has inherited and which has motivated it. And the attack on Kashmir on 22nd October 1947, 1965, 1971, and then Bhutto's call to bleed India white through 1,000 cuts, they're all inspired by this philosophy. We have to conquer, we have to finish them. Till we don't understand, till that time, you cannot deal with Pakistan. We have to understand one thing. The DNA of Pakistan is essentially anti-India and anti-Hindu. And after internalizing this bitter fact, you have to decide how to deal with Pakistan. Otherwise, Vajpayee will be hugging Nawaz Sharif in Delhi and Kargil will be happening. Dr. Manmohan Singh will be making a statement here and Mumbai will be happening. So this is an endless saga. Friends, then our next neighbor is China, with which we share a border of 3,380 kilometers. And unfortunately, Nehruji had no understanding of China. He was a romantic. He lived in a world of his own. He talked of Panchsheel. And you had people who could see through the entire thing. And that included his own senior colleague, who would have been the Prime Minister if majority had prevailed. But Gandhiji used his own discretion, and the man was too decent to protest. And though he had 13 votes, 12 votes out of 15, he opted to work as a Deputy Prime Minister under Nehru, Sardar Patel. And Sardar Patel wrote a letter looking at, there was a cabinet meeting in 1950 after the Chinese had marched into Tibet. And at that time, Nehru appeared to be so indifferent and casual that Sardar decided not to take up the matter in the cabinet. But I wrote a detailed letter, and I have a copy of the letter, but obviously this is not a place to read the whole letter, but in which you wonder whether Patel was a visionary, a Jyotishi. Whatever he said, a letter is dated 7th November 1950, in which he has drawn the picture of all that is going to happen between China and India in the next 25 years. Everything. The man had so much vision. And he requested that we must meet in a small group to decide what to deal with China. This is how the letter concludes. But that meeting could never take place because Nehru was not keen about it. And ultimately, it so happened that Sardar Patel breathed his last. He died on 15th of December 1950. And rest is history. We all know that how 1962 happened. And again, I talked about Harold Lasky. It was his chela, Krishna Menon, who was the Defense Minister of India, and who ensured that how India would lose that war in a most humiliating manner. How much time do you have? Okay. Friends, when talking about China, we must understand China's worldview. other countries have civilizations. But in case of China, China feels that they have a civilization which is good enough for the entire world, and they have one country called China. And they think, China used to call itself Rungao, which in translated in English will mean Middle Kingdom or Central Country. They are the center of the universe in a way. That sort of arrogance they have. And they have a philosophical tradition going back to thousands of years. And they had one philosopher called Confucius, popularly known, and who is at least 3,000 years old. And they also have, I'm cutting the speech short because we have to budget time. They have another philosopher in the same tradition who wrote a book called The Art of War, Master Sun or Sun Tao. And right up to Mao Zedong, they have been following his teachings, his philosophy, and Ho Chi Minh also followed the same policy while dealing with America. Now, to elaborate it a little further in brief, see, Chinese have a game, and it is called Wei Qi. Wei Qi. In English, it's called Go. And there are what you call a grid of 19 lines by 19 lines. This, the reference of game to the game is very interesting. So this game has a grid of 19 by 19 lines, and each player is given 180 stones. The two players, each given 180. Now, what you have got to do is that you have to move your stone in such a manner that you get the vital areas and you displace the other player from the vital areas of the grid. There is no killing involved, there is absolutely no confrontation, but the winner will be able to encircle and outwit the rival. Now contrast it with the game of chess which we have got, which originated in India. Here, the elephant will go and kill the king, king will kill so and so. So one side is vanquished, killed, and other side emerges victorious. This game, which is called Go in English, this defines their strategy, mindset. And this is exactly they have been trying to do in the case of India. You look at India today, Nepal, the only one-time Hindu nation. Where is it vis-a-vis China, Burma, Bangladesh? Pakistan is completely in their pocket. They're putting up a port at Gwadar. And now they are trying to take over Sri Lanka also out of the India's influence. And we are also helping them in it. That's a different issue. So they are trying to encircle us. They have built up infrastructure right to our borders. They built up railways right up to Lhasa. And they have got more than 30 airports. In Tibet, we have none. We don't have a railway going up to the border. We don't have our roads going up to the border. We haven't built up any infrastructure. Friends, we have to understand China. We have to understand the Pakistani mindset. And before I conclude, I would like to quote Sun Tzu, that is the author of The Art of War, who is a Chinese philosopher born 544 BC, and in a celebrated work called Sun Tzu, he says, and this is what we should follow. There are only 4 lines. The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemies not coming. The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemies not coming, but on our readiness to receive him. Not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather than on the fact that we have made our position unassailable. If we keep these lines in wisdom, I am sure neither the Chinese nor the Pakistanis will be able to keep their feet on the Indian soil, and we will have all friends with us. I started in Hindi and I'll end with 4 lines in Hindi, because what is the way out of this difficult situation? मैं आम हूँ इतना, मैं आम आदमी हूँ इतना, पर जनून सिर पर सवार है। मैं आम आदमी हूँ इतना, पर जनून सिर पर सवार है। ये उनका आखिरी और अपना पहला वार है। उन्हीं के पैतरों से अब उनकी हार होगी, और जनता के आशीर्वाद से परिवर्तन की नई शुरुआत होगी।